In a diplomatic strike on Pakistan, India has hit back by taking several measures, including the suspension of Indus Water Treaty, shutting down of Atari Wagah checkpost, and reducing the strength of respective High Commission to about 30. Now, this is down from the current 55, and this comes after a brutal attack in Pahalgam, where civilians, people who had come to have a good time in the meadows of Kashmir, were killed by Pakistan-based terrorists. 28 lives. We lost about 28 people. And now to decode India's response to the attack, I'm being joined by former Indian Ambassador Prabhu Dayal. Thank you, Ambassador, for joining us here on India Today Global.
Thank you for having me on your show.
All right, Ambassador, I want to begin by asking you about the attack. As somebody who's been part of foreign service for so long, how do you look at this attack where a tourist spot was hit, civilians were targeted for being Hindus, there was direct messaging to the Indian Prime Minister, and also it happened at a time when we had a foreign dignitary visiting the country, US Vice President J.D. Vance. So what do you make of this?
Well, I served in Pakistan in the early 80s, and I used to hear their top army commanders and generals say that they want to bleed India by 1,000 cuts. That, in fact, became the main plank of the policy of the ISI.
Yes.
And what we have been witnessing all these years is a deliberate attempt by the ISI to hurt India in any manner possible. So this particular incident, the terror attack which took place in the Pahalgam area, this was just a manifestation of Pakistan's avowed policy of wanting to bleed India by 1,000 cuts. Now, let me say that we are not going to take things lying down. You referred to the diplomatic response by India. That is the first response.
Yes.
It doesn't mean that this is all that India is going to do. This is the first installment, the first tranche. But it indicates that there are many, many more steps which will follow. Let me highlight a few things.
Okay.
If Pakistan wants to bleed us by 1,000 cuts, we should also hurt Pakistan in every manner possible. Now, the decision to hold the Indus Waters Treaty in abeyance is something that is intended to hurt Pakistan, because there is no doubt that Pakistan relies heavily on the waters of the Indus River and its tributaries. And if this treaty is held in abeyance and we stop the waters going to Pakistan, then there will be a big impact for Pakistan. But then again, there is this decision to downsize the Pakistan
High Commission.
High Commission here, and also downsize our High Commission. Now, why do we want to downsize the Pakistan High Commission? Let me state categorically that the High Commission of Pakistan is a den of spies.
Okay.
It is from where the Pakistan intelligence agencies operate and try to keep the sleeper cells active here in India. It is well known that Pakistan has many sleeper cells. And these sleeper cells help the ISI to carry out anti-India activities. Now, by downsizing the Pakistan High Commission, you reduce its ability to sponsor and keep alive the sleeper cells. Yeah. Now, let me also mention that the government of India will take necessary action to locate the sleeper cells and wipe them out. But the starting point, of course, is the downsizing of the High Commission of Pakistan. Now, what does the declaration of the defense attaché, military attaché, air attaché, naval attaché in the Pakistan High Commission mean? What does declaring them persona non grata amount to? We want them out, because we certainly know that these officers have been in sort of a covert contact with some officials, some persons who are connected with the military establishment in India. And we want to take military action if required. Now, the question is being asked, will India resort to a military action?
Yes.
No option is off the table. Let me state that what the government has announced till now is just the opening gambit But much more will follow, and whether there will be some sort of military strike remains to be seen. The government will naturally examine the pros and cons, but as a starting point, it is necessary to have the Pakistan attaches in the High Commission who are connected with the defense establishment out from town. Then, of course, there is this decision to ask all Pakistanis who are here in India to leave,
Yes.
and to close the Atari border and to stop Pakistanis from getting SARC visas. You know, a lot of Pakistanis are able to come to India and engage in anti-India activities. So we want to make sure that there is no Pakistani hanging around here. Because once they are here, it is very difficult for our intelligence agencies to keep track of where they are going. You know, there are many areas where they can move around and have some sort of a cover and engage in anti-India activities.
Correct.
So it's a very meaningful step to just keep them out. Now, as I said, this is the first tranche, the first installment, and much more will be following.
So you mentioned about Pakistan's official policy, how it's always been about aiding terrorism. Just days before the attack, we also had a radicalized Islamist General Asim Munir, giving out a provocative speech, talking about Kashmir being the jugular vein of Pakistan. He also talked about the two-nation theory. Then how do you see this attack in the light of these statements being made just days before the attack?
You know, General Asim Munir is known as the Mullah General, because he is a hardcore Islamic fanatic.
Yes.
And his speech a few days ago highlighted this aspect. He believes in a very Islamized version of Pakistan, and that version is hostile to India. So his speech smacked of a lot of hostility towards our country. Now we have to be prepared for whatever he decides to do. And he's been up to a lot of mischief. But, and this is a fundamental but, our capacity to handle such mischief is also well known to the Pakistanis.
Yes.
So they will not go beyond a point. However, we have to send across a message that we are not going to tolerate any sort of nonsense from General Asim Munir or any of his subordinate generals.
Now, Ambassador, you mentioned that what India has done so far is just the beginning, is just an opening of how India would respond to Pakistan. There's more to come. So could it be in the form of military action? Do you think we will see a repeat of what happened after 2016 and 2019 attacks? Like, are the two countries currently staring at a military standoff?
As I said, nothing is off the table. You know, India's strategy will be based on two issues.
Okay.
Firstly, how to hurt Pakistan in the short term, and secondly, how to do so in the long term. Now, in the short term, certainly, some sort of military strike or a surgical strike or any military operation will be contemplated, depending on how the government considers the pros and cons of such action.
Okay.
There will be other sorts of short-term actions which will be very much on the cards. For instance, the downsizing of the mission. This is something that will take effect immediately and have effects immediately.
Yes.
Or, for instance, even the Indus Waters Treaty being held in abeyance, that will have immediate consequences, and certainly also consequences in the long term. But there are some steps which we should take and which we will take, which will have a lot of effect. Firstly, we have to wipe out all sleeper cells of the ISI which exist within our country. It is well known that there are many such sleeper cells, and the government will have to take a very decisive action over time to locate the sleeper cells and wipe them out.
All
Secondly, as you know, Pakistan is witnessing insurgency in a number of provinces.
Yes.
Firstly, in Balochistan, there are liberation units like the Balochistan Liberation Front and other such ethnic groups which are fighting against the Pakistan army.
Yes.
And they're doing so because they feel that while Balochistan is a very resource-rich province, its people have not been getting their due. And in other words, they are being deprived, and Balochistan remains the poorest province of Pakistan.
Correct.
Then we have the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province, where the Pashtuns live. And you know, the Pashtuns have never reconciled with the idea of being a part of Pakistan. They never believed that the Duran line, which separated Afghanistan
Yes.
from Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, was a justified land, that it was imposed on them by the British colonialists. So, in other words, they want to undo whatever harm has been done to them, and they want to work towards integration with Afghanistan or separation from Pakistan.
All
So,
right.
in the short term and in the long term, we should do whatever is possible to assist, like the Balochistan Liberation Army or the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, in whatever manner that is possible, whether it is by giving them funding or using help from the Afghanistan government to give them weapons. Now, let me mention that the relations between Afghanistan and Pakistan are extremely sour.
Yes.
At one time, when the Taliban government was installed in Kabul, the Pakistanis thought that this was their victory and that the government in Kabul will do as they wanted to. But this has not turned out to be the case. The government in Kabul is becoming increasingly more hostile to the Pakistanis. And there are many factors which are in fact leading to the increase of this hostility. For instance, there are a lot of Afghans who are living in Pakistan as refugees.
Yes.
Because conditions in Afghanistan have not yet fully normalized. But Afghanistan doesn't have the resources to take care of so many people. They have been living here. But Pakistan is now rounding them back
Yes.
and pushing them back into
Evicting
Afghanistan. And this is souring their bilateral relations. So there is a lot that is happening between Pakistan and Afghanistan, which we should take note of and see how we can use it to our advantage, which would also be to the advantage of the authorities in Kabul. So let us see all possible options. As I said, no option is off the table. Whatever government announced yesterday is just the first tranche, but a lot more is in the offing.
Clearly, then we have to wait and see how the government responds further than this. But now coming back to the attack, Ambassador, Indian intelligence agencies have warned before that Pakistan was preparing for a hot summer in Jammu and Kashmir. So this essentially meant two things: increased infiltration bids along the LOC and also attacks on civilians. So Ambassador, do you think there was some misjudgment on our part, some lapses, given that, despite heavy tourist footfall in the region, there was no security deployment?
Law and order is a very important subject, and
Yes.
security is an important ingredient of law and order. Now, this aspect should have been more closely attended to by the government of Umar Abdullah.
Okay.
It was their responsibility to make sure that nothing untoward happened. Of course, the central government's intelligence agencies were also very active, and they are also responsible. But the change of the authorities in Srinagar
Yes.
led to some slackening of the attitude of the intelligence agencies in the state government. And personally, I hold them accountable in this regard. Now, there are certain other aspects. Umar Abdullah has been very outspoken against this attack, and he has come forward to criticize it. Now, it's the sort of time when the whole of India must stand united. There are some voices from within the opposition who have been trying to criticize the government of India. I think it is time that they realize that the message which should go out from India is that we are totally united and that we will take proper action against these sort of terrorist activities which are carried out against us, and also against those people who are behind such activities. So the important thing is to stand united and to convey the message that we are united, and use all possible resources, whether those are from the center or from the state governments, toward addressing the challenges.
All right. Now, Ambassador, you talked about political changes in Jammu and Kashmir, and we have seen that since 2019, since the abrogation of Article 370, the region has seen a lot of progress. Tourism has been on the surge, but now this attack comes as a blot on all the progress that has been made over the past few years. So, do you think we could see a rise of militancy in the region again?
Well, I think we will be able to keep that aspect in check. But
Okay.
the fact of the matter is that, as you said, normalcy has returned to Jammu and Kashmir. We have also seen prosperity rise.
Yes.
People are more well off. Their businesses are doing better. Tourism, for one thing, is a very important part of the economy of Jammu and Kashmir. And tourism has been thriving.
Yes.
So what will happen is that this particular incident which happened in Pahalgam will certainly have an impact on tourism related activities, which would mean hotels, restaurants, other sorts of tourist activities. These will be impacted. And the well-being of the people of Kashmir will be adversely affected. And that is why they have been very outspoken against this particular terror attack.
Yes.
So, in other words, the fact which is to be taken prior notice of, and the fact which is great priority, is how to reinstill that sense of confidence among the people of Jammu and Kashmir and enable them to carry out their normal activities and once again bring full prosperity to the state and not let this terror incident impact in any meaningful manner.
All right, sir. Now, Ambassador, my last question to you is Pakistan's Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif has also called a National Security Council meeting today. He's going to address the situation. So, what do you think could come out of that meeting? What reciprocal steps could we see coming in from Islamabad?
Well, the message has gone across to the government in Islamabad
Yes.
that the government of India is going to take some very decisive action. So surely they are trying to assess what sort of action, and they would be taking whatever steps they consider necessary. But the important point to note is that India has been very, very categorical in conveying to Pakistan that this sort of terror act will not go unpunished, and those people who are behind it had better watch out. And the government in Islamabad certainly is feeling uneasy because it feels the heat which is now going to be brought on it by the government of India.
Clearly, sir, India has drawn some red lines with regard to Pakistan. So, thank you so much, sir, for joining me here, explaining us what impact could these steps have on Pakistan that India has taken so far, and also what kind of impact we could see coming in the few days. Thank you so much.
Thank you.